Hello and welcome back. This is the video for the upper topping series. So the topping upper series is 4 books. It's green, blue, indigo, and purple. If you go to the ebook catalog and you click topping and go to page 2 and 3, these are going to be the books that you will be teaching. Each of these books has 3 units within. You will have a student book that you'll be teaching, 3 units within, unit 1, 2, 3, and a review unit. Most of the time we don't focus on the review unit too much, but you can use it if you need to. There are 3 physical books that you'll be using: the reading book, which is 1 color, the student book, which is the color of the series plus white, and a workbook, which is white. To start off with, let's look at the schedule that I've planned out here for the 6-week syllabus. So this book series takes about 6 weeks to do. You have about 1 unit per every 2 weeks to go over. And for the most part, it's quite comfortable compared to the lower topping series, as it's a bit more relaxed, even though there is more to teach. So to begin with, start off with welcome and conversations. This is try and bond with your students. They are probably in grades 4, 5, and 6 at this point, and they might not be as open to the idea of singing songs and dancing anymore. That's what younger students like to do. So if you engage them on like topics of interest, like K-pop or movies or games, or just something that you can connect with them on, it's a little bit of a way to like get them to use their skills in an interesting manner that suits them outside of the structured lessons. But it's also a buffer in case students are late or you need to increase time for a certain area of the lesson. So use this buffer time as you need to, as goes with the buffer time at the end of the classes. But to start with, you're going to start with the reading book. The reading book in this example I'm using is Blue 2. No particular reason on that, it's just the one I picked up. So in these books, you're going to have 5 pages and then a work page. This is contrary to what you were doing in lower topping, where you had 3 pages and a work page. These ones also generally have a lot more to read. So for the first week, try and speak 1 paragraph at a time. The students should repeat as well. In the higher levels, indigo and purple, try and push them to work on their enunciation and their speaking speed. Sometimes students will just rush through things and ignore punctuation. They might miss words. Another common thing is the soft S's on words might be missed. Try and get them to go back and re-say those ones. And just make sure they're reading correctly and they're speaking correctly. It's a good benefit for them. This can take a bit of time. Aim to do it within about 15 minutes if you can, including this page here. So these work pages are going to be based on the reading that you're doing. It's not too complicated. Some teachers ask students to go back and try and find the answers they're giving in the book by underlining them, highlighting them, what have you. If you have time to do that, great. If not, don't worry. And once this part has been finished, you would move on traditionally to the student book. Now, student book pages, you normally be responsible for page 8, the first 2 pages of each unit. Sometimes you'll be responsible for this speaking part here. Your co-teachers will tell you if that's appropriate or not. It's not too difficult. This is just role play, and you should repeat the role play through. However, seeing as this is what I'm teaching, I don't have until the 3rd page in a while. I'm going to cover these pages here. So in this situation, it's using the conditional if statements, and it's got some word time here, which is basically some phrases that you might want to use, as we'll go with the pictures up here. But if those aren't for you or you want some more, there's these pages here. Now, additionally, there are pages on this next pictures on the next page that you can use if you want to. These may have been done with a student and the Korean teacher already. don't get them to write anything in. That's the Korean teacher's responsibility, but the pictures may be helpful for them to practice with, which is why I'm mentioning it now. So part A is always going to be vocabulary plus grammar. It's just for them to practice with and speak out and say the correct things where possible. B is, and also there's sometimes be a C unit, will be things for them to do. So like underline, circle, write in. These are just activities to try to make sure students understand the grammar and can use it correctly. This doesn't take too long, but it is core to both the essays and the speaking test at the end of the unit. On the essay note, part D will give you something that you can use to make an essay based on the grammar structure from the beginning of the book. I highly recommend using this as it's very useful. Now, once you've done that, as per my schedule, you will say the next thing to do is an essay plan. Now, we don't do plans for lower topping because they shouldn't need to do them. Their essays are very simple sentences. Sorry, but in upper topping, we do want to encourage the students to write better essays if where possible. Now, this is the target essay template paper, so they need to be writing their essays in here. This is the landscape version. There is a portrait version where they're stacked on top of each other, but it's basically the same thing. There are 2 boxes with lines in it. Students need to write their essay in this box. We do have some templates and examples for the lower levels, for green especially, but come blue, indigo, and purple, the students should be able to write their own essays just by using the planning techniques that you'll be teaching them. So in the back of the book, of the workbook of each unit is this page here on I, which is Make Your Own Story. This is where we used to write our essays. We don't do that anymore. However, as a hint, there is this check mark here, which actually will give some guides for that question or for the essay topic that you'll be doing. You can also do a mind map here, which is what I personally do. And I do it here. I'll get them to plan out their essay here, which doesn't mean write out the whole essay. It just means to get the ideas down. And I do this as a group activity usually, get them to like discuss the best ideas, get them to write as many as they can down. And by doing this here, they won't lose that plan. And at home, if they decide to, they can finish it for homework, they improve it for homework, refine it for homework. They can translate words they didn't think that they could in the class time for homework. It's purely up to you as a teacher, but it may be very useful as a tool. Some teachers give out a piece of paper which has a mind map on it. I used to do that, and I found a lot of students would just lose those, and it became a hassle. So I've been using here instead, and using the prompts from here to help myself. And if you can do the same thing, great. If you want to use your own style, that's completely fine. But remember, you do have to produce 2 essays within the 6-week period. Now, in the second week, you will be returning to the reading book again. This time, students should be reading by themselves. There are 2 ways to do this. Either get them to read one at a time, 1 page at a time, or alternate depending on how many students you have. Another way of doing it is get them to read, and then when you clap your hands or click your fingers or whatever signal you're going to give, the next student in your list will have to continue onwards. And if they don't start straight away because they weren't listening, everybody starts from 0. And this is like a technique my predecessor used to use because she felt it was a very effective way of making sure the students are paying attention during other students speaking, which is very good, but it can be quite time consuming. So depending on how much time you have, use it accordingly to what works for you. As I said, I have students read 1 paragraph and then the next student reads it. And depending on how much students I have, I alternate between the pages. Then that's this bit done. After this, I move on to the workbook. And the workbook, we are responsible for the last 2 pages of the workbook, which is generally G, H, and I. I is just the essay, so you can ignore that for this part. G is always going to be about the story that you have just read. Hence why reviewing it just beforehand and going over things is quite important. Sometimes it's summarization, sometimes it's ordering, sometimes it's true or false questions. It's a multitude of things, but it's mostly about making sure the students understand the context of this story. H is nearly always about vocabulary and grammar. If you want to find those, it's in their vocab book, but the students should have done this with their Korean teacher at this point, so they will know which words should be going in. Note that this situation says best completes each sentence, as sometimes you'll have 2 or 3 good answers, but obviously you'll have some answers that are better or more appropriate than others. In this situation, as amusement park, eco, big, and amazing would all be fine answers to go in here, but amusement park is most likely the correct answer because it makes more contextual sense. And that's basically it. Sometimes it's match 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with A, B, C, D. So you got to match the words with their meanings or example sentences. But these are generally self-explanatory. They're not too difficult. And after you finish that, the students should move on to do their essay drafts. Now, because you don't really have that much time to spend on essays in the 6-week schedule, I generally have them finish the essays in this part here. So they should be doing their draft. I'll grade it, give it back to them. They fix it over here. If they haven't finished for whatever reason, set it for homework. If they didn't finish the draft for whatever reason, please make sure you ask for it back within a 3-day period. So if you have a lesson on Monday, it should be given back by Thursday. If you have a lesson on Friday, it should be given back on Monday. The reason for all this is otherwise you won't have time to check and grade the essay before you return it to the student to their final draft with. But don't be too worried about them finishing the final draft essays straight away. It's just nice to have it done and out of the way. But again, get them to do it for homework because you may not have the time to finish elsewhere. But in my personal experience, I found that students tend to try and start the draft at this point, like the last 10 minutes of the essay planning phase. And then they have enough time to do draft and final draft in this second week. Moving on to week 3, this is just doing all of what we've just done for unit 2, and it's pretty easy. You may want to review the reading book in the workbook section here. You might have time to finish the essay draft, final drafts. It's up to you how you decide to use this time, but I have found that it varies depending on which classes I'm teaching, depending on how competent and comfortable the students are with their writing and speaking skills. The review parts, I will strongly suggest that you review the parts of the student books, as it will make their speaking tests a lot easier for you to do later on. So once you've completed the 5 weeks, which should have completed the 3 units of the book, you're going to get to week 6, which you will want to review all 3 units before you do any speaking test stuff. And let's get onto the topic of speaking tests, which is down here. In this point, when they're doing speaking tests, you're going to have maybe between 4 and 8 students who are in the classroom, and the students who are not doing speaking tests should be doing something. Don't let them sit around doing nothing. It will make your speaking tests a lot more difficult. So they should be finishing their essays if they haven't finished them already, which is why I said don't worry too much if they haven't finished their final draft, because it is the final draft. They at least have the draft finished. But try and get to complete the second draft essays or their second essay final draft at this point. If they've done that, give them some word searches or ask your Korean teachers if they have anything they need to study for their final tests. Just use the time wisely. Again, having the students facing away from the camera, the other students facing away from the student being recorded is very helpful, especially if they're timid or shy. And it means that other students aren't distracted from doing their essays if that's what needs to be done. It's just a situation of the students are doing a speaking test and they're doing it in a comfortable environment. The speaking test itself, I will go over now. So here is the Bluetooth speaking outline. So it's saying make an if statement using these following pictures, and it's saying here that the student teacher should role play where the student uses at least 3 of the words from the examples here. And then same for here, it's going to say the same thing. So if we go to the speaking test itself, you're going to get the student's name written down here, and these are provided for you. So for unit 1, it'll say, can you make an if statement using pictures? So you point at a picture and say, can you make an if statement using this picture? And be like, if I eat too much, I will be full. This one here, for example, if I don't do my homework, I will be embarrassed. And this one here, if I don't wear my coat, I'll be cold. Like any 3 sets is usually good. If you want to do more, that's fine, but 3 is usually enough. And you want to try and keep these videos between 1.5 and 2 minutes long, if possible. In unit 2, this was a role play, so they need to use these in the conversation, using the picture as an inspiration. So I'll ask the student their name. When will you be arriving at blah blah department store? They might go, oh, teacher, I'll be arriving at 2 p.m. I'm just leaving the cinema now with my friend. Oh, what did you see at the cinema? Oh, we saw the beginning of this movie, blah, blah, blah. So once they've said 3 separate sentences with 3 of the separate keywords, they're pretty much finished for this part here. And the same again for this role play involving a restaurant situation. And the speaking tests themselves, so long as you've reviewed the student book, will be quite fluid and quite simple. It's not too difficult, but try and make sure that the recordings are quite compact. I mean, I find that most of these take about 6 to 8 minutes on average, because you might have to do a few retakes if they make mistakes halfway through. But when you're doing the recordings with upper level students, let them finish doing at least 1 take before you make any comments about feedback. If they make mistakes in the first draft and they start umming and ahhing, just help them along. But get that first take done, because once you've done the first take and they've gone through the whole set of questions, nearly every time the second take is always better. Sometimes they do it perfectly, it's just done and it's great. Sometimes they might make a little mistake at the end and you can just fix that and then go back and do a 3rd recording. Don't do more than 3 recordings at a time, otherwise you'll run out of time for each student, of course. So try and at least get 1 recording per student. That's good. Don't take too much time on 1 student. If they need time later to be re-recorded, please do it during their IBT time the following week if you can. I think that pretty much covers most of it. As I said in the last video, the framing and mic situation should be identical. You shouldn't need to worry about any of that. It's the same for all students doing recording tests. But just to review, student be standing in a comfortable position in front of the projector screen. You should have your camera in front of them in a nice, good position on a tripod, and preferably with a lapel mic attached to them. In Zoom, have their face at the top right corner so that you can see only them, have the other students with their videos off and sounds muted. But that, I think, concludes upper topping. Hopefully that can help you with your teaching of upper topping.